Now let's look at the state of education and funding in South Africa. Have we been sitting on dynamite for some time? To discuss, we're joined by Professor Gerald Wangenge-Ouma, who is the Director of Institutional Planning at the University of Pretoria. Professor, thank you very much for being with us. Do you believe that what we're seeing, these demonstrations were inevitable when the former president announced that the state would move towards fee-free education? Then the economy declined. Then we had a situation when NSFAS, that was meant to carry forward this plan, giving grants to some first-year students, had to postpone that, not even able to cover them for the first day of varsity. Was this all bound to happen?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on your program. My condolences to Professor Tumba's family and people being injured by the police. You know, the funding of higher education and the funding of students is an affordability issue. So the state needs to have resources in order to be able to support students who deserve funding. As you would recall, in 2018, when the new system was promulgated, it was decided that students from families that earn less than 350,000, that is the total family income, would the state would pay tuition fees for them. In a sense, it's some kind of a targeted tuition-free higher education regime. Now, about 90% of our students, thereabout, qualify for this funding. And that's a big number of students. So even before COVID, we had projections that already indicated that the state will not be able to afford this. Now, the challenge though then is, fast forward with COVID and with the economy pulverized and people losing jobs and family livelihoods being lost, when the state then revised its budget, you know, we saw just about 400 million being deducted from the budget for higher education, the block grant, and about 500 million for infrastructure development. At that point already, one should have expected that there's going to be greater demand for student financial aid because of what I've already explained, the economy going southward, people losing jobs, companies closing shop, and livelihoods being destroyed. So yes, there should have been expected that there would be greater demand for student financial aid.
The 350,000 Rand, what do you think of that as a threshold, given what you've outlined, that we're a country that wants to provide free education? I think everybody would want to see that, but there are huge economic challenges. Then there's talk of the missing middle, but at least 350,000, was that something that you believe was good enough and government should stick to that? And then the question is, are the demonstrations for much more unjustifiable?
First, the amount, the minimum threshold was and still is 350,000. The big challenge is not necessarily the threshold, but the whole structure of financing higher education. You know, even if you made it less, a very big chunk of South African students would fall within that category, you know, given the deep inequalities in this country, high levels of poverty. So yeah, there is demand for support out there because of just what I've explained, the high level of inequality. The thing here is we need to rethink the structure of student financial support. Is what we have currently sustainable? The evidence suggests that it's not sustainable.
Yeah, even what we have now. The other thorny issue is students with debt, and some students have a lot of debt. And it is heartbreaking that they may be doing well academically and they just can't pay and finish their studies. But in a situation where the state is giving 10 Rand increases for very important social grants, that's people living hand to mouth sometimes, can we say that the state should now bail out the students, or is that unreasonable?
But that's a difficult question, you know. The thing is, state resources are not unlimited. there's lots of demands on state resources. You've already made the point, about the social grants. It's not just the social grants. We have to pay for security. We have to pay for infrastructure. We're bailing out parastatals, your state-owned enterprises and all those kinds of things. So the fact of the matter is that the state does not have money, or rather does not have sufficient money to provide for all these needs. So there's a need for us to rethink, the way we finance higher education. Yeah. We need to rethink the whole idea around public finance. There are questions around the funding of state-owned enterprises that are collapsing. There is corruption. And what this has done is that there's some kind of a loss of trust on the part of students. So when the state explains that it does not have money, the economy is not doing well, then students ask, but why are you putting money in collapsing state-owned enterprises? And then there's corruption and all those kinds of questions.
Yeah, we could bring up SAA. Professor, we're running out of time. Very quickly, what is your prediction for this year? Do you think that there will be some sort of compromise reached, or could we see demonstrations across campuses for the entire year?
Look, we were here in 2015, 2016. We reached some kind of compromise. We had a solution around about 2018. It probably was not a sustainable solution. So I think there's going to be some kind of compromise. Already the minister announced that there's going to be a ministerial committee or something of that kind to look at what's going on and suggest solutions, look at the funding, higher education funding structure, and suggest ways of fixing this. But the point of the matter is, with 90% of our students qualifying for student financial support, where the economy is, the revenues that the state has, we do not have sufficient funds to fully support all the students who qualify. That is the reality, and we need to rethink the funding system.
Yeah, very difficult situation. Thank you very much for those explanations. That was Professor Gerald Wangenge-Ouma, who's Director of Institutional Planning at the University of Pretoria.